So the Trump administration, they did an executive order trying to kill birthright citizenship. And for those who don't know, essentially what birthright citizenship says is, hey, if you were born in this country, you are a citizen of this country. Pretty simple, but apparently, like with conservatives, it's rocket science for some reason. You know how it is with these people. They've never really cared at all about the sort of the Constitution and shit like that. Like, none of these people ever really care about any of this stuff. You know, standard sort of spiel with conservatives aside. A lot of these motherfuckers, they don't care about the rule of law or anything like that. In fact, they will do everything possible in order to actively undermine and destroy that shit. So what do we got here? I know he signed the executive order trying to end it, and it was going to go to the Supreme Court. It was always going to go to the Supreme Court, and now they're doing hearings on birthright citizenship. Basically, from what I understand, what the Trump administration is basically asking, and the reason why they want to get rid of birthright citizenship is because they don't want federal judges to have injunctions on the attempts of deportations that they're trying to do. So basically, what they want to do is have it such that we can do whatever we want legally, we can do whatever unlawful bullshit, and the federal courts can't get in our way. Is like that's like such a simple summary, right? Because Trump has been doing the same thing. Like, well, we have like so many people that we need to deport, right? And we have to get rid of them, folks, right? There's like we don't have enough time for 1 million, 2 million, 3 million trials, right? Which is the sort of argument as to why he's trying to like use the Alien Enemies Act, and he's trying to kill birthright citizenship, so then he can sort of like get around. Is it jurisprudence? No, it's also a reason why they want to get rid of habeas corpus, which is another part of the Constitution, another amendment of the Constitution that they just want to flagrantly disregard. But can't be like you can't ever like have anything with like conservatives. They hate you and hate everything that you stand for. But what do we got here? What do we got? Jurisprudence is theory of law. Thank you, Boy Meets Mini. I don't think that. Yeah, that doesn't apply here then. Habeas corpus they want to get rid of though, because again, the point is that they want to just deport millions upon millions of people. That's the point why they want to get rid of it. So basically, what the Trump administration is trying to argue in trying to get rid of the sort of status of basically they want to get rid of the status that people have under the state to have people become stateless. And the reasoning as to why they want to do this is because they want to rush through as many deportations as possible. That's the point of this. They want more deportations. They want to just get rid of a lot more people, and that's kind of the whole point of this. So what? Thursday's Supreme Court hearing over President Donald Trump's attempt to curb the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship technically wasn't about his attempt to. Technically, it wasn't about whether his attempt is legal. But while the hearing exposed his attempt's illegality and his administration's lack of confidence in its legality, it's unclear when the justices will issue a definitive ruling whether it's legal or not. So they can operate sort of under the assumption that, oh, okay, we can just kind of keep going forward with like all the bullshit that we're doing, regardless of its legality or not. Because, like I said before, the reason they're trying to do this is they're trying to sort of see how far the federal courts are willing to go in order to sort of like enforce their sort of like, I don't know if it's correct to say like state law or something. I don't think that's correct to say. They're trying to see how far they can push the federal courts. It is basically what I'm trying to say here. They're seeing how far they can go with it. With the arguments they're saying, they're basically, it's just like, well, we have a bunch of deportations we have to do, so just don't get in our way. It's like, but what you're doing is clearly illegal, and it has been said by multiple courts saying like, what you're doing is illegal. You're trying to challenge our power. We see what you're doing. You can't do this. we are a co-equal branch of the government to help keep each other in check. They're trying to sort of push and see, well, how far are you really willing to go with that? I hope this like broadly makes a lot of sense, right? They want to just secure way more power for the executive. I guess this is sort of like the consequences and byproduct of more and more power being given to the executive, like through like the Obama administration, all this stuff, because of some of the stuff he's did with like drone strikes and whatnot, and a lot more stuff that the Trump administration did in his first term. But this is sort of like the ideological conclusion of that. Essentially, now we're asking ourselves questions like, are we allowed to just kind of like not listen to the injunctions of the court when they say like, hey, you can't do this because it is clearly unconstitutional, and we are telling you you can't do this. Well, that's because the Trump administration isn't asking the judges to decide the merits of his executive order, which effectively seeks to unilaterally rewrite the Constitution. Rather, it asks them to rule that lower court judges who blocked the order overstepped when they granted nationwide relief instead of granting relief for plaintiffs who sued in certain geographical districts, with his appeal stemming from district judges who blocked the order in Washington State, Maryland, and Massachusetts. Yeah, and part of the thing that they're trying to do is they're trying to basically say, like, well, instead of going through these federal judges, they should have, instead of you filing injunctions, which makes the process more efficient, they want to make it as inefficient as possible and individualize the process. This is the thing that I'm trying to get to here. They want to individualize the process and make it such that each individual has to file a class action lawsuit against the federal government. And just think about that for literally 3 seconds and just think about how fucking insane that is. We know how much power the federal government has and how much in terms of infinite money, infinite power, in order to just be able to say like, well, because this is what this is really meant to accomplish. This is essentially meant to accomplish like saying like, hey, we're going to make it such that anything that we do cannot be challenged. Because what individual is going to be, insane enough to challenge the federal government in court? So essentially, what's going on here is saying, hey, are you sure that you want to challenge us in court? They're trying to say, to goad people into saying, like, we're going to make it such that individual plaintiffs have to challenge the federal government with class action lawsuits instead of these federal court judges getting in the way. Essentially making it such that effectively a part of the function of the courts is just can't work, which is insane. But that's basically the sort of arguments that they're going with. And it's amazing how this got up to the Supreme Court, because that means that the Supreme Court, they themselves won't be able to file any sort of injunctions either, which is a direct challenge to their power, is another thing that this would inevitably sort of argue. So I personally think that this isn't going to go anywhere. I do think that more than likely what's going to happen is it's probably going to be like a 7-2 ruling with Alito and Thomas probably voting to dissent because they're insane. So I really don't think this is going to go anywhere. So against that backdrop, and likely knowing that it has a loser of a case on the merits of the long-settled birthright citizenship issue, the administration pressed its appeal by complaining about the property of nationwide injunctions generally. So they're just doing this just to complain. That's so fucking funny, dude. Jesus. A subject that the justices have raised in several cases having nothing to do with birthright citizenship. So the injunction issue goes beyond birthright citizenship, but the court is considering it in this especially important context. It's unclear what the court will say in its forthcoming ruling about when so-called universal injunctions are appropriate, a decision that could affect how lawsuits are mounted in all sorts of cases during this administration and beyond. But it became clear at the hearing that the underlying merits of the birthright citizenship issue, and importantly, when the court can decide it, is also on several justices' minds. The Democratic appointed justices pressed U.S. Solicitor General John Sauer, this fucking sniveling dipshit, most strongly on its merits, with Justice Sotomayor, for example, saying that Trump's order violates 4 Supreme Court precedents. Sauer defended the legality of Trump's order while focusing primarily on the injunction issue. Because again, they don't care about the birthrights. It's never been about that. They're just mad about the fact that lower courts keep saying, like, yeah, you're not allowed to do this, quite literally, in terms of these deportations. There's just no basis of this within the Constitution. You need to stop doing this. That is the problem that they're having in particular. But he said litigation over the order's legality should go through coalition in the lower courts. Justice Elena Kagan told Sauer she thinks the case presents this question. If one thinks that it's clear that the EO is illegal, how does one get to that result? In what time frame? On your set of rules without the possibility of a nationwide injunction? Right, because now we have to think about, like, okay, you put in an executive order, which is clearly illegal. Plaintiffs are now supposed to be the ones that submit class action lawsuits against this. Who is supposed to now determine if this is illegal or not, if you can't have nationwide injunctions? It's essentially like, it's basically trying to put in a complete spanner in the works, a wrench in the works of the court system. Essentially saying, like, a bunch of courts are not able to sort of, like, rule on terms of, like, the legality of certain, like, executive orders, and make it such that it's a more sort of individualized process and take away power from the courts. That's what this is in reality supposed to do. If this makes broadly any sense. At least this is sort of just how I'm interpreting it. Because, let's be honest here, the Trump administration is not very happy about the fact that a bunch of lower courts are saying, like, hey, this person that you're trying to illegally deport on the basis of the Alien Enemies Act, which has basically no fucking jurisdiction at all in terms of whether a person has to be deported, because, let's be honest here, a lot of the people that are currently getting deported with the Alien Enemies Act as a justification, it's just illegal. Like, there is no basis. And people are allowed to appeal those things in court. That's like what habeas corpus is there for, which is why they're also talking about getting rid of habeas corpus. So then they can fast track all of these fucking deportations. That's the broader point of, like, this complete legal nonsense. Sauer said there should be appropriate percolation in the lower courts, and then ultimately the Supreme Court decides the merits in a nationwide binding precedent. Wait, decides the merits in a nationwide... What does he mean by percolation? I'm curious. Percolation. What does this even mean? Getting, like... It's a physics term. The process of a liquid slowly passing through a filter. Well, that's pretty revealing. They just want to fucking throw a fucking wrench in the works. They want to make it such that it takes way longer for these things to be processed. Because getting rid of the injunction process, like I was saying earlier, it's just going to make the whole thing 10 times slower. And they want it to be slower for fairly obvious reasons, so they can just deport more people illegally. That's why they want to do this. Kagan said it could take years for the issue to reach the court under Sauer's approach, and all the while, there would be an untold number of people who, according to all the law that this court has ever made, ought to be citizens who are not being treated as such. This is a really, really good point. A lot of people are going to be born, and essentially, because of this executive order, they're going to be stateless, even if they're born in the U.S. They're going to be treated as stateless entities, which means, guess what? The federal government and sort of federal agencies can have whatever jurisdiction that they want. That's the point of this, to make to sort of throw a wrench in the works, to essentially take away the statehood of every, because this will take away everyone's statehood. Like keep it a fucking $1.50. This takes away everybody's statehood. Everyone becomes a stateless actor, meaning that the federal government, the executive, can essentially do whatever they want in terms of, well, certain like orders or laws or bills, because, well, these people are no longer like within the jurisdiction. They can't like fight back against any of this. Well, looks like we just, like you're saying, Boy Meets Mini, this is not a dictatorship. Yeah, they're trying to make it such that there's a lot more sort of like power coalescing around the executive. If we could do like a little bit of a meme, this could be like an enabling act of some sorts. Because again, if everyone becomes stateless, basically, you can just kind of do whatever you want to them. She raised the concern that the government could just not seek Supreme Court review of adverse lower court rulings on the merits of the issue because the government has no incentive to bring a case it would lose. Trump-appointed Justice Neil Gorsuch had also asked Sauer on how the court can get to the merits expeditiously. Sauer said that while there are a number of tools to do that, this case cries out for percolation. Again, he just wants to... He's saying that this in particular needs to be, like, slowed down, but that doesn't make any sense because this would slow everything down. Everything would start being slowed down. It's silly. Noting that the issue is being litigated on multiple federal appeals courts. Already, the U.S. court system is as slow and as bureaucratic as it is. What the Trump administration is essentially saying is, what if we just make it slower? What if we just make it worse? Fellow Trump appointee Amy Coney Barrett observed that the government has pressed for speedy merits considerations in other cases. Sauer agreed while giving an example of a case in which the administration did so because that other case, it thought, was clear-cut on the merits. I wonder what he means by this. Clear-cut on what merits? I wonder if this has something to do with certain people being deported. Because that's what's mostly been going through in terms of, appeals of the fucking courts. This case, he conceded, is novel. As a general matter, saying one wants to let an issue percolate in a deliberative manner has an air of sophistication and even wisdom to it. But here it's difficult to read the administration's litigation strategy as anything other than an admission of weakness about the legality of Trump's order and an attempt to implement it wherever it can by avoiding Supreme Court review. And that is pretty much the main crux of the problem. They just want to get around the courts so they can deport a lot more people a lot more quickly. And basically ignore people's sort of constitutional sort of rights. I know that conservatives are fucking morons, and they don't seem to understand this. Literally within the 14th Amendment, I'm arguing with this with conservatives right now. The 14th Amendment doesn't apply to just citizens. Within the fucking Constitution, in the 14th Amendment, it applies to persons. The Constitution. And the reason why the 14th Amendment is worded specifically with the term persons is because guess what happened for pretty much just before the fucking 14th Amendment got written up. Oh, it was the American fucking Civil War. Whoa, crazy. And it was written up for slavery. That's why. Whoa, crazy. Because guess what? Slaves were considered to be stateless actors, non-persons who didn't have constitutional protections. And the 14th was made in order to give them constitutional protections. Yeah, say it ain't so. That's crazy. Yep, just like you're saying, Boy Meets Mini. Only 3/5 of a person. Yeah, and guess what? That fucking takes care of that. The 14th Amendment's just like, actually, no. That's not the case anymore. It applies to all persons. That was in the 14th Amendment, if I recall correctly. The 3/5 of a person thing. I'm trying to remember where that was. Let me double check. 3/5 of a person. Yeah, that's the 3/5 compromise, right? Yes. It's the 3/5 clause within the Constitution. And the 14th Amendment essentially just gets rid of that compromise. Is what that's supposed to do. Because it pretty much just gets around that whole problem to begin with. Lovely. Very good. Where was I in this damn thing? Oh, here. A big question now is when the court will reach the underlying issue of the legality of Trump's order. The court's forthcoming decision in this injunction-focused appeal, expected by July, won't necessarily resolve that crucial merits question, but it could at least give a hint as to when and how it might, and perhaps even to what the justices think about it. Well, personally, and this is just kind of what I think of this whole thing, it's complete fucking bullshit. We know why the Trump administration are trying to do this. They want to just completely throw a gum in the works of the court system so they have the ability to just illegally deport people way faster. That is why. Because guess what? The courts themselves, and even in the Constitution, says like, hey, if you're a person, you have these inalienable rights on the soil of the U.S. Whether the Trump administration and his dumbass supporters fucking like it or not. They want to throw a complete, like, gum in the works for the express purposes of doing all of their illegal bullshit. That is the point of all of this. And personally, I think that the courts are probably going to argue that there's probably no basis for any of this because, quite literally, this challenges their own power. And if there's one thing we know that these people care more about than anything, it is maintenance of their own power. Now, I really do not think that this is going to go through. There is no fucking way. Like, this is probably going to be a 7-2 ruling. I mean, let's be honest here, Boy Meets Minnie. You may not have any faith in SCOTUS, but they voted 9-0 in terms of the Kilmar-Obrego-Garcia case, saying that the Trump administration has to do everything possible to facilitate the return of Kilmar-Obrego-Garcia. And that's part of the reason why, like, Trump is being as whiff-waffly about this as possible, because they're mad about the fact that that's how that particular case went. Because they have, like, just no basis for any of this stuff. They're just doing this because, well, they just want to be as stupid and annoying about it as possible. So, a quick summary as to what we're talking about here. The Trump administration, simply put, is having a problem with the fact that lower courts are able to put federal injunctions, quite literally, over the fact that what the Trump administration is attempting to do is, simply put, just completely illegal. It is illegal. There is no merit or basis for anything that they're doing, and they're just mad about the fact that they're getting called out for it. Basically. So, as always, the courts, sensing the challenges to their power that the Trump administration is doing, slapped it down, in particular with the Kilmar-Obrego-Garcia case, because that's what they're doing. So now, with this whole birthright citizenship executive order, it's meant to basically challenge the power of the courts. See, sort of like logically how far they can sort of push their own executive privileges. Because, let's be honest here, it's just because they're fucking racist. They just want to deport a bunch of people. That's literally the point of all of this. And they're mad about the fact that the courts are doing their job and saying, like, no, you can't do this. What you are attempting to do, simply put, is just unconstitutional. So they want to make the courts as inefficient as possible in order to be able to get away with way more shit. Like they literally tried to argue saying like, well, instead of like proceeding and putting stuff through the lower courts, people should just have to instead of having like nationwide injunctions be a thing, individuals should have to do class action lawsuits against the federal government. And you should know just how fucking insane that is, because no individual is ever going to win against the federal government because they have way more money and way more power than you. Crazy. Whoa. But they want to basically make it such that everyone is stateless in order to be able to just do whatever ruling that they want. It's quite literally an attempt at doing dictatorship, which is why I don't think that this is going to go anywhere. But what? This is going to be a decision on this injunction-focused appeal. We're going to see what their decision is in July, which is not long from now. So we're just going to kind of have to wait and see. But personally, I don't think that this is going to go anywhere whatsoever. This would be insane because quite literally, this is a fundamental challenge to the court's power. And what do we know? If anything, this is just not going to go anywhere. Because people's fundamental things are being... the judges' fundamental power is being challenged here. What do you have here, Boy Meets Vinny? Something that's related to this? Kristi Noem has been working with the producer of Duck Dynasty to pitch a reality TV show titled The American, where immigrants will compete in a string of challenges across the country for the honor of fast-tracking their way to U.S. citizenship. Damn, they want to gamify fucking in like the grossest ways possible. Gamify fucking people's naturalization. This is fucking insane. Yeah, Mr. Beastify fucking citizenship. This is fucking nuts, dude. Like, yes, these mere peasants who are trying to do things that they are allowed under international law must compete for our good graces, for our Lord, yes. This is fucking insane. Let's be honest here. This is some of the fucking most insane shit I've ever seen on the fucking planet, dude. But, racism spurs people on in very, very weird and wacky ways. But yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens with this decision in July. I don't think that this is going to go anywhere because there's simply put just no basis for the Trump administration's position here. So personally, what I think is going to happen, they're just going to say like, yeah, this is complete, utter bullshit. Get the hell out of here with this nonsense. You can just get bent for as much as we are concerned because you're just trying to challenge our power. Quite literally. But, crazier things have happened. Crazier shit has happened. All we can really do at this point is just kind of wait and see if this gets favored. Because I do think that this is more than likely going to be favored favorably. Say that like 10 times fast. In terms of the Constitution, unless I don't know, a bunch of people on the Supreme Court just hits their head on something or whatever. But yeah, I don't think that this is... I really don't think that this is going to go anywhere. Because it's just complete, utter fucking nonsense. Let's be honest here.